All right, let's get right into it. Welcome to this explainer, where we're taking the often intimidating world of federal capital raising regulations and translating it into a practical, easy-to-understand roadmap. If you're a young professional, an aspiring founder, or honestly just someone curious about how businesses legally secure funding, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to strip away the dense legal jargon and give you the direct, actionable knowledge you need to navigate these waters safely. Picture this. You've got a brilliant idea for a startup. You have the drive, the vision, and the team ready to go. All you need now is the funding. But before you go out there and ask anyone for a check, you really have to face a pretty sobering reality. There is strict government oversight governing exactly how you can ask for that money. It's not as simple as passing a hat around or just posting a link online. To get you to your funding goals safely and legally, we're going to navigate through 5 crucial checkpoints today. We'll cover raising capital the legal way, navigating registration and exemptions, strict rules for communication, why these regulations actually matter, and finally, the cost of non-compliance. Starting off with Section 1, raising capital the legal way. Let's look at the absolute foundation, the core mandate that governs every single dollar you try to bring in from outside investors. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding what a security actually is. In the eyes of federal law, if you're taking someone's money in exchange for a piece of your company, like equity, or if you're handing them a written promise to pay them back with interest down the line, you are selling a security. It literally doesn't matter if you call it a casual loan between friends or a sophisticated convertible note. If they're investing money, expecting a profit based on your hard work, the federal government is officially watching. And that brings us to the overarching rule of the financial road. Think of capital raising like a highly regulated interstate highway. By default, the law says you have to go through the incredibly slow, expensive, and thoroughly inspected toll booth of public registration. That's what big corporations do when they go public. But if you're a young startup, you obviously can't afford that. You need a special legal pass, kind of like a carpool lane, to bypass that massive toll booth. Moving right along to Section 2, navigating registration and exemptions. Let's shift over to those special lanes and see how this builds into actionable strategies for a growing company. You essentially have 2 paths. On one hand, you have the heavy burden of acting like a Wall Street public company. Full public registration requires maximum transparency, routine public filings, and honestly, a massive budget for accountants and lawyers. On the other hand, you have exempt offerings. This is your carpool lane. It's a much faster, leaner process, but it requires you to meet incredibly strict criteria regarding exactly how much money you can raise and who is allowed to sit in the passenger seat of your company. Now, what's really interesting is how these specific exemptions act as safe harbors. Federal regulations lay out several of these paths. For instance, Regulation A allows you to raise up to $20 million in its first tier. It acts almost like a mini IPO, provided you file an official offering circular. Then, there's Regulation D, specifically Rule 504, which allows up to $10 million, but you face very strict limits on how you advertise. And finally, the intrastate exemption has no federal dollar limit at all. But it comes with a massive catch. Your business and every single investor must reside strictly within your home state. To truly understand how strict these safe harbors are, let's look at that intrastate exemption a little closer. If you want to claim you're a local business raising money from local people, the government requires absolute proof. Specifically, 80% of your assets must be in that state, 80% of your revenue must be generated there, and 80% of the funds you raise must be spent inside that state's borders. It's a financial speed limit totally designed to ensure you aren't just a national company exploiting a local loophole. All right, on to Section 3, strict rules for communication. Now that you know the paths, you might think it's time to start hyping up your raise. But assuming you can just tweet out a link to your pitch deck is a massive and honestly incredibly common mistake. The authorities place very tight gag orders on what you can actually say while you're raising money. You absolutely can and should share regular factual updates about your business operations, but you cannot broadly advertise your investment opportunity to the general public. That's called general solicitation, and unless your specific exemption explicitly allows it, it is straight up illegal. You can't hype up potential profits or promise the moon. The communication speed limit is strictly enforced. But hey, there is some really good news for modern founders on this front. The regulations have actually adapted to how startups work today. If you're pitching your startup at an organized official incubator event or a demo day sponsored by a university or an established angel group, the rules offer a level of protection. In these specific educational settings, presenting your business isn't automatically labeled as a legal general solicitation. It allows you to actually speak to a gathered room of potential investors without breaking the law. Which brings us to Section 4, why these regulations matter. At this point, you might be a little frustrated, wondering why on earth the government makes it so complex to simply take money from people who actively want to give it to you. Well, it all boils down to one core concept: investor protection. The financial markets only function if people trust them, right? These rules exist to ensure that someone handing you their life savings has access to the exact same factual, unhyped, transparent reality of your business as a giant institutional bank would. It's all about leveling the playing field and preventing misleading sales literature from tricking inexperienced individuals into devastating financial ruin. And finally, Section 5, the cost of non-compliance. So what actually happens if you decide you're smarter than the rules, ignore the toll booths, speed in the carpool lane, and just blast your pitch all over social media without the right exemption? The snowball effect of breaking these federal rules is absolutely catastrophic. It's not just a slap on the wrist. First, the government can immediately suspend your current fundraising efforts. Everything just halts. Next, you could be forced to refund every single dollar you've already collected from investors, money you've probably already spent building your product. Then come the severe financial penalties, the legal fees, and the civil lawsuits. And that leads us to the ultimate penalty. If you or your partners cut corners, commit fraud, or violate these securities laws, you can be hit with the bad actor disqualification. This is a strict regulatory label that effectively acts as a death sentence for your future as an entrepreneur. If you were labeled a bad actor, you, your executives, and your major shareholders are legally barred from ever using these exemptions to raise private capital again. Your funding lifeline is permanently severed, no way around it. It's a highly sobering question to ask yourself, isn't it? Is skipping a few legal steps today really worth permanently losing your ability to fund your company's future tomorrow? This is exactly why understanding these compliance boundaries as a young professional is infinitely more important than having a flashy pitch deck or a super charismatic sales pitch. Ultimately, playing by the rules of the road isn't just about avoiding terrible penalties. It's about building a solid foundation. True business growth relies on trust. Complete transparency protects the people who believe in you, ensuring the lasting survival of your company. So before you send out that very first pitch deck, you have to ask yourself, is your startup being built on a legally flimsy hype or an unshakable foundation of trust?
If you found this helpful or want to stay updated when this regulation changes, subscribe and support the channel. And if you need the full technical details on this CFR, click the link in the description below. See you next time.